Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to Empowered Aging. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Snipes, and today we're talking about how to bounce back with a tool called Hardiness. Bouncing back, sometimes called resilience, is the ability to bounce back, to come back from stress in any piece of your life. Physical stress, if you have surgery or you injure yourself, or maybe you're just not feeling so well, your ability to bounce back is your resilience. Interpersonal stress, when something happens in your relationships, being able to bounce back from that distress and move toward your rich and meaningful life. The same thing is true with emotional and mental stress, and as well as environmental stress. If you are exposed to a lot of heat, for example, the ability to recalibrate your body. So bouncing back is more than just a mental thing. It's your body's ability to restore itself and rebalance itself after a period of stress. What stops you from bouncing back? What stops resilience? Well, common barriers include inability to relax. Unfortunately, as we age, our hormones change. And as a result of that, among other things, we see that our autonomic nervous system becomes imbalanced. You have two types of nervous systems in your autonomic nervous system. Your sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight system, and your parasympathetic or your relaxation nervous system. So when there's a problem, your sympathetic nervous system kicks into action, and that's good. But when the problem's over, it's supposed to come back down to baseline. And that's when the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in. Unfortunately, as we age, just naturally, unless we are taking steps to prevent it, that sympathetic nervous system, our stress response, becomes much stronger than our relaxation response. So little things that may not used to have bothered us start to bother us. We're going to talk about how to address all these things in a minute. Feeling unsafe or powerless in your environment. If you feel like people are trying to take your power, if you feel like your body is rebelling against you and you're losing your independence, if something else is going on that's causing you to feel unsafe or powerless. And focusing on what you do not have, what you cannot do, and the threats. Now, I'll give you a little hint here. When your stress response is activated, when your body is saying, hey, there's a threat out there, so I need to be fighting or fleeing, your body is going to pay more attention to the threats, which means we have to take steps to actually force ourselves to acknowledge, yes, the threats exist, but also so do these other things that are good or safe in life. The tool that we're going to talk about today is called Hardiness, and it was proposed by Kobasa back in 1978, I believe. So this has been around for a while, and it's tried and true. What Kobasa said was we need to focus on commitment, control, and challenge, the 3 C's. Commitment. What and who are you committed to in your rich and meaningful life? And in the last video, we talked about defining your rich and meaningful life. Of the things in your rich and meaningful life, this is where the commitment part comes out. Which things are going well? Very rarely does a situation occur where everything in your life is absolute crap. So which things are going well? Which things are going okay? They could be a little better, but they're fine. And which things are not going well. And when I work with people in clinic, sometimes I'll have them do a pie chart that identifies the things that are going well, not going well, and the things that are going okay. So they can see kind of a percentage. Another way to do this is with marbles. Have 3 cups, and for each thing, put a marble in the cup. Everything that's going well, you're going to put a marble in the going well cup. Everything that's going okay, put a marble in that cup. And everything that's not going well, put a marble in that cup. And hopefully, the first 2 cups are far going to outweigh the bad cup. Doesn't mean that the bad cup isn't stressful. It doesn't mean that it's not painful. However, this helps us turn our attention and recognize the balance in life. And so we don't get stuck in this fear spiral of everything is crap and I'm completely powerless. So commitment, identifying, reviewing that rich and meaningful life, and identifying what and who are important in your rich and meaningful life, and that you're committed to using your energy to nurture. Control. There is virtually nothing in this world that you have total control over. Even your own body. You can try to control it, but sometimes it's just going to rebel against you, and you're going to have back pain, or you're going to have a stomach ache, or you're going to get sick, despite your best efforts. So there's nothing in this world that you can totally control. When something is not going the way you want it to, identify what aspects of each situation can you control. I've given the example before of I've got a couple of bad knees. And yeah, I don't like the fact that it hurts now to get up and down sometimes. There are things that are frustrating about that. I can't make my knees feel better without like total knee replacements, and I'm not there yet. So what aspects can I control? I can warm up. I can stretch after I do any activity. I can try to minimize things that put stress on my knees. Those are things I can control. And what do I need to accept that I cannot control? Well, I need to accept that some days my knees are just going to hurt and they're going to crack and pop and do all that stuff that I really don't like. But I can focus on the fact that I can still move. I can still walk. I can still go upstairs. So I'm identifying, we call this dialectics, the good and the bad. Is it the way I would ideally have it? No. But am I still able to participate in my rich and meaningful life? Yes. Is wasting energy being angry about the fact that it's not perfect, is that a good use of my energy? And challenge. View each obstacle as a challenge instead of a barrier. We have obstacle courses, and in obstacle courses, people are supposed to get over, under, around, or through the obstacle. A barrier is something you can't get past. So viewing things that happen, viewing challenges as obstacles. How can you keep the good going? That's a challenge. How can you improve the things that are not going the best? And how can you accept the things you cannot change? All three of those are huge challenges. Ultimately, it partly comes back to asking yourself, what is worth my energy? So hardiness is commitment, identifying what you're committed to using your energy for. Control, identifying the aspects of the situation that you can control, because virtually every situation you have some control over. And challenge. Once you identify what you can do to improve the situation, viewing it as a challenge to use your energy to move wisely toward your rich and meaningful life. Examples, chronic pain. You wake up in the morning and you hurt. It's one of those mornings, you got a cold front coming in and you just hurt. Okay, well, my first reaction when that happens is to get a little snitty. I'm like, oh crap, I hurt. And then I check myself and I say, well, I recognize that I don't like feeling this way, but is getting angry about it a good use of my energy? No. What can I do to address this situation? What parts of this situation are within my control? I can put ice on it. I can put icy hot on it. I can heat it. I can stretch it. I can massage it. There are a lot of things I can do to address my pain. And I can also accept the fact that I may have some level of pain today. And that's just how it's going to be. And I can either dwell on it, or I can turn my attention to the other things that are important in my rich and meaningful life. And that is really an important key is that radical acceptance of the fact that sometimes there are things that you don't like that you just can't change, like diabetes. When you have diabetes, a lot of times it's not something that's reversible or not totally reversible. Okay, well, that's unfortunate. But with diabetes, there are a lot of things you can do to make sure that you are maintaining healthy A1C levels, that you're managing your blood sugar, that you are doing what you can to slow the progression of the disease so you don't develop the side effects or don't develop them as quickly. Hearing, that's another issue that can be really frustrating for some people. If you can't hear very well, then you use a lot of energy struggling to hear and trying to figure out what people are saying and getting frustrated because it doesn't feel like you can participate with others. There's a lot of stress that goes along with not being able to hear well. What can you do about it? You may not be able to fix your ears, but most of the time you can't, but you can go to the doctor. You can look at getting hearing aids. You can be in environments. You can make your environments cater more towards your hearing needs, like removing background noises. There are a lot of apps that are on the phone now that you can use when you're in conversational settings that will, if you have a Bluetooth hearing aid, that will pipe what's being said directly into your hearing aid so it filters out a lot of the background noise. So there are a lot of things that can be done to reduce the stress, not only the emotional stress and the physical stress, but the mental stress that you go through when you are struggling to hear what's going on. Interpersonally, if you wake up and you just, first thing that comes into your mind is, I feel like I'm such a burden. Okay. What can you do about that? The first thing is recognizing that feelings are not facts. Feelings are how you are assuming other people are thinking, what you are anticipating from others, what you are projecting onto yourself. It's important to check the facts, get the facts in this context at this time. If I feel like I'm being a burden to my children, then I'm going to ask my children, am I asking too much? Do you feel like I'm being a burden to you? And I have to be able to hear and accept what they say. If they say, no, Mom, you're not at all, no problem doing this for you. Well, great. And I have to convince myself and I'm talking personally, I have to convince myself to believe them. Because it's like, well, are they telling me the truth or are they just trying to be nice? It's up to them to be honest. And I've raised my children to be very authentic, so I don't have to guess. Are you just telling me what you think I want to hear? Ask yourself, if somebody else was asking you to do this for them, and you could, would you think they were being a burden? So there are a lot of things that you can do when you feel like you're causing problems or you feel like there's a burden, to check the facts and figure out if your feeling is accurate. If you have regret over failed dreams or goals, that's going to come up periodically, especially as we age. We look back over our years and we say, I really shoulda, coulda, woulda. Well, you didn't. And using your energy to beat yourself up over that, to be angry over that, to dwell on that is not going to make your life any better. It's actually going to increase inflammation, increase pain, worsen your blood sugar, all things you don't want to have happen. So recognizing those failed dreams and goals and grieving them. I'm not saying just, whatever, let it go. It's important to grieve the fact that, okay, I didn't do this. Working through that process and recognizing how you can use your energy now to attend to other things that are now important in your rich and meaningful life. When I started college, I thought I was going to be a medical doctor, and I entered pre-med. didn't push myself hard enough, didn't take the advice of my parents on a few things. And ultimately, med school was not in my future. Do I regret that? Occasionally. There are things that I could do if I were a medical doctor that I can't do as a PhD doctor. However, I also recognize that getting upset over that is going to do me no good. And I can work with a doctor or a nurse practitioner for any prescribing needs, and I can use my talents that I honed instead of going to medical school to help people focus on their mental health. Identifying what can you do to improve the situation, and is it worth your time? Is it worth your energy? If you thought you were going to go to the Olympics, well, if you are 75 years old, probably not going to be able to even consider doing that now. However, you can stay in good shape. You can inspire others. You can even compete in some things that are geared towards people of older ages. Gossiping is another one I hear a lot when I work with people that are in assisted living or independent living facilities. And this can be exasperating, and it can make you not want to come out of your room. However, is that what you want in your rich and meaningful life? Do you want to feel like you're a prisoner in your own room because you want to avoid the gossip? No, of course not. With gossiping, what can you control? Well, let's start out with what you can't control. You can't control other people. You can share with them that it bothers you when they gossip if you think that's worth the effort, or you can ignore them. People who gossip are often doing that because they feel like they need to be the center of attention. They need to be needed for their, immense amount of knowledge about what's going on with everybody. If you don't feed into that, then you are going to free up a lot of energy. Some people gossip because they feel threatened by others and they want to kind of bring them down or put them in their place. Okay, well, that sounds like their problem, not yours. And it's important to recognize the difference between what's important to address and what's not important to address. Dr. Seuss had a great quote: "Those who matter don't mind, and those who mind don't matter." If you have a friend that lives in the same facility, they're probably not going to pay any attention to that gossip because they know you and they care about you. And we can recognize that the person who's gossiping is coming from a very dark place in their mind. They're lonely, they're scared, they're angry, I don't know. But gossiping is not something that typically people who are happy and healthy do, because it's not a good use of their energy to help them move toward their rich and meaningful life. Anxiety and irritability are other things that we can use hardiness for. When we feel stressed out, well, there are steps we can take to downregulate, to slow our breathing, to identify what threats actually exist in our environment, to give ourselves space to feel safe and empowered. If you're an introvert, maybe you don't like spending a lot of time around a lot of people. Okay, recognize that and say, you know what? I have this amount of time. My daughter calls it extroverting. She's like, I can extrovert for an hour or two a day, but after that, I need some time. And that's wonderful that she knows that. She knows that she starts getting anxious and irritable if she has to be around a lot of people for multiple hours at a time. Setting that boundary, that is something you can do. When you recognize what triggers your anxiety, you can figure out how to manage that. And finally, cognitive slowing and confusion. Guess what? It happens to everybody. It doesn't mean you've got dementia necessarily. It happens to everybody. As our hormones change, as our gonadal hormones, as well as our thyroid hormones, as we get older, things just don't work as quickly. And so it can be frustrating. But the more frustrated you get, the more angry you get about that, or the more worried you get about that, the more you increase inflammation, and the more you speed up that process of cognitive slowing. Too much stress gives us brain fog. So what can you do? If you want to clear your head, how can you minimize stress, minimize additional stress? Write things down, have reminders, whatever it takes to feel like you are not struggling to keep up with things. For more tips and tools, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and please click that like button if this was helpful to you.